What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, it's your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me today, my podcasting cousin from across the pond, the captain of the Taylor gang, the one and only Adam Taylor. What's going on, Adam?
Yo, what's popping, man? How you doing? How you living? I love that. I love that intro. How you going? How's it going,
try
man?
to try to bring the energy in here, man. It's playoff week. The Celtics, we now have an opponent. We know that the Celtics will be playing the Atlanta Hawks this upcoming weekend. So, real quick for everybody listening, here's the plan for today. Me and Adam, we're going to jump into the play-in that happened last night, Atlanta versus Miami. We'll jump into what went wrong, what we were all expecting, and just ultimately did not happen. We'll start to preview the Hawks against the Celtics for this upcoming weekend. And then the second half of this, we got a little bit of an award show going for y'all. So Greg and I, if you've been following along here, we've been doing the All NBA Awards quarter by quarter, tracking the differences throughout the season. So we have our one finalized Green with Envy All NBA list coming up here at the end of the podcast. But Adam, let's jump into a little bit of this play-in game last night. So the Atlanta Hawks beat the Miami Heat on the road as the 8 seed to steal the 7 seed from the Miami Heat, 116 to 105. And we are as guilty as any show out there. And there's a lot of shows out there that were just as guilty as us, and in fact, you know what? I made a faux pas. So we recorded the All NBA segment of this the day before. You'll hear my faux pas where I sound like a real ass at the end of this, where I actually even say, get ready for more Celtics Heat coverage coming up this week. I quickly correct myself, but much like many shows, we kind of expected the Heat to come out with a win and be coming to Boston on Saturday, but instead we're getting the Atlanta Hawks. What were your thoughts about that game last night? And the Hawks really were, they were up by double digits for a good portion of it.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm still working my way through. I woke up and there was just so much coverage I needed to hit. So I hit that as much as I could. So, it's out the way. I'm there for when everybody wakes up. I have seen bits of it. I think for me, the biggest kind of takeaway is the Heat. For all the talk of the Heat being gold, it's all true, right? So
Yeah.
Miami are definitely a team that have consistently rebuilt on the fly, done a really good job of it. And now all of a sudden, Father Time's just like, nope, no more rebuilding on the fly. It's time to blow it up. Y'all have got to go back to basics. Jimmy Butler, yeah, okay. I think he kind of shot himself in the foot with that, guaranteeing a victory over Atlanta.
Trae Young didn't like that. I didn't even realize Jimmy had made a guarantee, but yeah, I know Trae called that out in the post-game presser.
Yeah, and then Kyle Lowry played some type of Kyle
Lowry had a throwback game last night.
Yeah.
He dropped 33 points last night. He was one of the few, members of the Heat that actually showed up. I've been saying a lot. He's no longer Kyle Lowry. He was an older version of Kyle Lowry last night in the good way.
Yeah, he was good. I think that he still looked a step slow. Defensively, he isn't the Kyle Lowry that he used to be. And as scary as it is, I think we're only 3 or 4 years away from saying similar things about Marcus Smart. I think that's fair. 4 or 5 years maybe. But
yeah, that's
it just depends on how his body holds up, right? Sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background.
What up, Henry?
Yeah, he's somewhere around doing whatever he's doing. Other than that, I wasn't too shocked to see that the Hawks won in terms of the way they played, right? So they definitely kind of fed Trae where they needed to. DeJounte Murray was really good. He's somebody that I'm really keeping an eye on for this Celtics matchup, just because, I wrote about this in Celtics blog today, and we can touch on it a bit more in a bit. But I pulled the numbers. So they've matched up twice, which is DeJounte Murray and Jaylen Brown. For a total of 12 minutes and 30 seconds over 2 games, he's held Brown to 6 points and Brown to 0 of 4 shooting from deep. I think Murray was originally brought into Atlanta to be that guy to provide defense next to Trae. I think he played well against Miami, dealing with what Miami had. But Miami just doesn't have the perimeter threats that you need to be able to start cooking guys that have Trae Young in the rotation. I just think their roster's just completely flawed at the moment. So looking back on it, maybe we were just crediting Miami for Miami of the past rather than Miami of now. But man,
I think that was some of my takeaways too. Is as I was watching the game, was why were we afraid of this team? Why did we think that this team had a chance to beat us? It was just very clear that they just didn't have enough depth, enough top tier talent. And we kind of started to touch on this towards the end of the season of realizing what we thought or what we anticipated could be the Celtics matchup. And, last night you got, Jimmy didn't have his playoff Jimmy game. That was the one thing that I think we all kind of held on to. And Jimmy just wasn't there. And it's a 1-game sample size. So that's the danger of the play-in, right? Just one game throughout a series. Do I expect he could have got it back against the Hawks and maybe made a difference? Potentially. But that's not the scenario that they put themselves in. And then last night they got a classic one of those. And we saw this in the, conference finals last year. One of those games where it's just, that's all I'm getting from Bam on offense. Bam had some really great defensive moments. He really, in that second quarter and beginning of the third quarter when Miami got back in the game, it was a little bit of Kyle Lowry. It was Tyler Hero attacking Trae Young to start the second half, and it was Bam on defense. Those were kind of the three things that allowed them to get back in for a stretch in between the end of the second and middle of the third. But offensively, it's just Bam. This is still all I'm getting from you as my number 2 guy. It's just not good enough. It's not enough. It's not good enough. And we saw that a lot of times, in the conference finals. And now when you have, like we talked about, not enough talent around, this is what happens. The Hawks go plus 18 on the boards. They go 26-6, second chance points. And, at the end of the day, Adam, I was watching this game. My final takeaway is I don't think either of those teams were very good. So I know as we transition into the Celtics Hawks here, I'm feeling pretty good about this matchup. You already started writing about this. There's an article up right now about some key matchups on Celtics blogs that Adam put out there. What's your general feeling now that we know come Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, inside TD Garden, it's going to be Celtics versus Hawks. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm confident. So I put it out on Twitter earlier today. Like, I'm expecting a gentleman's sweep in this game. I don't expect it to go any further than 5 games. And the reason I'm expecting, I was about to say Miami, you see how ingrained it is in us.
We've been thinking that way for so long. It's really hard to rework. We have some guests that are coming up later in the week, and I was doing some notes. I actually already put Heat in the notes, so I had to go back this morning and change it from Heat to Hawks before we send it to our guests.
I mean, it's so easy, man. Honestly, it's like so when I was looking at it kind of this morning, I was like, right, Trae Young he's struggled from the field this year. There's no way around it, right? He's a high frequency guy, but his accuracy just hasn't been there. He's majoritarily done a lot of his shooting from the mid range this year, which is like, I was quite shocked to see. I haven't watched a ton of Hawks basketball. So yeah, I was expecting, maybe a sweep, but Trae Young's always capable of going off for 50, winning you a game. You've got John Collins there that matches up well against Boston. I'm expecting a gentleman's sweep, but I think it's going to be a shootout. But the Atlanta's not going to be able to stop the Celtics. The question is, can the Celtics figure out their defense quickly enough to be able to stop Atlanta? Now, I'd like Boston to come out and win game 1. I think that should be a statement game, not just for this series, but for the entire playoffs. Like, we smoked them, absolutely cooked them, and then it's done, right? And then you just you build off that momentum, feed off that win, and try and get this over as quick as possible. Well, I really don't want to be going deep into playoff series against teams that you should be sweeping.
Yeah, you mentioned that you think it's going to be a gentleman's sweep. I think there's exactly 2 ways that this series plays out. I'm going into my Doctor Strange mode here, but I've played out all the scenarios, and there's not just one. I think there's 2 ways the series plays out. I think it's either just a straight up sweep and a beatdown. I think that's option number 1. Yeah. That's obviously what we prefer. You come out, take care of business. Option number 2 is, did the Celtics let, the narrative that we thought was going to happen, did they let that seep into their heads? Were they expecting Miami? I mean, we've played Miami in the conference finals 2 out of the last 3 years. That's a rivalry. That's one that you can see them getting their minds around and getting up for. What's one thing that we've seen pretty consistently from this team this year is they do have a tendency to let their guard down. They have a tendency to come out a little bit flat if they're not, psyching themselves up properly. And I kind of hate talking in this manner of, coming with the right energy and effort, because that's, it's very subjective.
And it's a trope, right?
Exactly.
The time. Yeah, I get it. But
we have seen them just fall flat in games that it's like they have no business losing. And it's why they're not the 1 seed, is because they had that happen too many times this year. So I'm with you that this series is going no longer than 5. But if it's a gentleman's sweep, like you say, I actually think the game that they're the most vulnerable for is game 1 coming up here on Saturday. And I think we've seen that in other series in years past. You think of a lot of those Orlando Magic teams that had the Evan Fournier, Aaron Gordon, Vucevic. They always felt like they would steal game 1 from Toronto or from Milwaukee, and then they would get dominated for 4 straight games. So I could absolutely see that playing out for the Celtics. So I think game 1 is their most vulnerable game. If they come out with the right, mindset, and like you said, just make a statement, I don't think there's any turning back in this series. I think once that happens, once the light is switched on, I don't think there's any turning it off. And so I think the Celtics will roll. But that game 1, I do think there is a little bit of let's see how they approach it. But you went through some matchups here in your article today, Adam. Tell me a little bit about, you mentioned the DeJounte Murray, Jaylen Brown one. Is there any matchup you see? Because I'm honestly been struggling to figure out where the Hawks even have an advantage in this series to lean into. And yeah, what have you found?
So I think the DeJounte Murray one's probably one of their stronger matchups, just because him and Jaylen Brown have cancelled each other out from this season when facing off against each other. Murray's a great defender. Brown's a great offensive guy. Brown's also a good enough defender to be able to limit what Murray can do offensively. So that's gonna be an important matchup. I'm really curious who they're going to put on Tatum. And I kind of alluded to it in the article, right? Like, I just don't know. It's Tatum versus everybody at this point. It's whoever you're going to throw on him at any given matchup. I genuinely don't think they have a Tatum stopper, right? No. I think that DeAndre Hunter might be the guy that they try the most just because of the size, the athleticism he's got. Other than that, I don't know. So I think
Jalen Johnson a little bit. I'm just thinking of size, athleticism. I mean, it's
John Collins, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, I just don't know where the advantage comes from in the front court. Clint Capella, I've kind of said, like, him and Rob Williams is going to be a key matchup, but it's very easy to kind of counteract that by just staggering Williams minutes against Capella's and then running a 5 out and dragging Capella out of the paint. Now, where's Capella's advantage? Because he's a rim protector. If he's guarding on the perimeter, he's cooked. And then defensively, you're going to be rebounding by committee. You're going to be throwing smalls at him, making him try and deal with guys underneath his hips. So I don't really see an advantage at the big man spot, especially if you do stagger Rob and Capella.
Yeah,
if you put them together. Sorry,
real quick. Sorry, I just want to jump in there because I think this is a huge point that we've touched on a lot throughout the season, right? About how actually this is where Rob coming off the bench is a huge asset, right?
Yeah.
And splitting them up, because you look at this team, and I like Okongwu, I like Capella, but they're guys that are going to use their athleticism and they're going to live around the rim and deter shots and be rebounders. But when you're spread out in that that 5 out offense with Al, or even if you're 4 out and 1 in with Rob setting screens and rolling, they've got to make really tough decisions that are going to lead them susceptible either to Al Horford, who shot 44% from 3-point range, second in the NBA this year, getting open shots, or ideally if Rob's out there, you're going to have them making tough decisions to disconnect from Rob's body, and you're going to have alley-oop opportunities for Rob Williams.
Yeah, and this is where it's going to come from, right? Like, if you look at Atlanta's bench, there's just no one. I don't know, like, if you stagger Rob and you create lob opportunities, and I'm looking at their bench now, Bruno Fernando isn't going to be able to do much, right? I'm kind of scrolling through who else is going to play the big position. Okongwu, you've just mentioned. Jalen Johnson, you mentioned there's some size for Jalen. Sorry, for Jason. I mean, Okongwu is good, but he's not athletic. He's on the ground. He's a grounded big. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? He's strong and he's positionally great, like in terms of like knowing how to angle his body, but there's nothing there. Like,
it's thin, man. It's thin on the big man side when they I mean their bench in general, just nothing scares me about the Hawks. There's nothing that jumps out the page. We know that Trae Young can get hot. DeJounte, we respect. I'm not a huge John Collins guy. He's just fine. He doesn't move the needle for me all that much. He's fine. But there's nothing on the Hawks that jumps out to you as, man, that could be trouble. And that's where I think this is a very lopsided matchup. No matter which angle I try to look at it, I can't see a world in which the Hawks are able to pull this upset.
Yeah, so John Collins to me is a really solid piece if you're playing a team that lacks perimeter bigs, like defensive perimeter bigs, right? Coming up against Boston, they're designed to deal with guys like him. Pick and pop, you're going to be running into a Tatum or a Brown or a Horford, or you're going to have a small that's running you off the line. So John Collins is a good threat. He's going to be able to do some stuff on the boards, but I just don't think he's enough. As you said, he's not going to move the needle. I think Clint Capella might be able to do a little bit here and there, but no, to me, this team, the Celtics just have too much depth, too much talent, 1 through 13, maybe even 1 through 14, for the Hawks to generate any form of like advantage. They can throw matchups at them, they can throw systems at them, but the Celtics have a bit of everything. They can throw Blake Griffin in there if they need somebody to just get physical and absorb some fouls. They can throw Malcolm Brogdon in there if they feel like that they need an offensive punch off the bench. If Brogdon comes in, he's not doing it, we can throw in Peyton Pritchard. If Pritchard comes in, he's not doing it, okay, we'll go a bit bigger, we'll throw in Sam Hauser. The Hawks just don't have that luxury.
Yeah, they don't have the versatility that we talked about recently on a past episode, right? There's not enough versatility, and their real variance in a series is going to be Trae Young, going off for 30 plus. And when you look at Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon, Marcus Smart, and even the Jays, if you need to switch out onto the perimeter onto him, he's going to get some of his counting stats, but he's going to have to do it at a high volume, and it's not going to be efficient, and that's not going to be the way in which the Hawks are going to be able to steal a couple of victories here.
Yeah.
So it's just a tough matchup for the Hawks. I think honestly, we can kind of head here and then wrap this up because we're going to dig into this series and to more of the playoffs here with some upcoming episodes that we have this week. But Adam, I don't think this could have broke any better for the Celtics. We've been talking about the path. We hit the jackpot.
Look, if you're talking about perfect matchups where you're just coming in with a clear advantage all the way across the board, no, this couldn't have broke any better. Now, the problem is with a team like Atlanta, and you touched on the Celtics could lose the first game coming in unprepared. I think if they're going to lose a game, it'll be the fourth. Celtics are at 3. They come in ready to take the sweep. But the thing with a team like Atlanta is they don't know that they're beat. If you listened to DeJounte Murray talk after the game last night, he was like, the Celtics were the conference finals last year, but that was last year. I want to see what they're about this year. They're coming in with nothing to lose, and sometimes that makes life really difficult, right? Like, at least if you face Miami, they have something to lose. There's a bit of pride there. There's some matchups there that they can exploit. So while I do think this is the best break Boston could have got, I also think that this is a potential trap series that could be, if you come in expecting a sweep and you might be a bit disappointed. I still expect Boston to win, but I just think that sometimes when it breaks this good for you, it's not necessarily the best thing for you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a good place for us to wrap up this side here. As I mentioned, we're going to have some guests later in the week to help us break this down. We've got a lot more playoff coverage, so make sure that you are tuned in across all of our channels, all of our personals here. We are going to have y'all with a lot of content here going forward. So for me and Adam, we're going to take a quick break here. And on the other side of this, it's going to be myself. It's going to be the coach, Greg Maneikis, and we are going to give you our All NBA awards for the 2022-2023 season. See y'all this weekend. All right. What is going on, everybody? This is your boy, Will. We are here riding shotgun. We got the coach of the podcast, Greg Maneikis, here. If you've been following along all year, we've been doing our All NBA MVP, and we've been tracking it quarter over quarter. And, now season's up, man. So we are at the finish line here. So we got to round this out with our Q4 awards. So, Greg, I did a little bit of math. So I have the averages, or basically I did a point total system of what it is through the first 3 quarters. But before I get to that, tell me a little bit, when we get to, because this is not going to take into account this last quarter of the season. So this is through the first 3 quarters. As you were making your final list, how easy or difficult was it?
I thought it was pretty easy because I was able to, I put my cutoff at 55 games. And then I just asked myself which teams and which players kind of defined this season for me. So if they didn't define the season in a positive way, then they probably aren't on my team. If they define the season in a negative way, then they're definitely not on my team. So there are a few names that we're going to get to that some people will be shocked. Other people will be like, nah, I feel you on that, dog. And so that was kind of it for me. Games and team success.
So I think our third team, we're going to have quite a bit of discussion surrounding exactly what you're just alluding to right there. I went with you. So I went with your measure of the 55 games of, what it is for this year, which real quick, I just got to go through this. So we know that the new CBA, it's going to be 65 games is the cutoff. Just a quick list of guys that would be completely ineligible if that were the case right now. Steph Curry, Devin Booker, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, Ja Morant, Anthony Davis, Giannis. Like, that's just a small, quick list. And Jimmy Butler, he's at 64, technically would also be ineligible for this as well. So that's just a quick snapshot of guys that would be ineligible for this. But for this particular exercise, I did what you did. 55 games was my requirement. And then for my first and second team, you got to at least have made the play-in. Nobody that didn't make the play-in, you can't be on the first or second team. Third team, that's a little bit more, all right, we'll be a little bit more subjective. We'll make some exceptions here and there so we can get to that. But I think we're on the same level of kind of what our criteria was for this season. So going back to my calculation. So Greg and I, if you've been following along, we did this at the Q1 mark, Q2 mark, Q3. So what I ended up doing, and I hope I did this right because I am no means a mathematician. So I panicked for a minute that I didn't do the math correctly and this was just going to end up making no sense. But I think I got it right. So basically, what I ended up doing, and I haven't told Greg how I did this yet. So this is going to be his live reaction where he's either going to say, "You're an idiot. This didn't work," and pivot, or it worked out pretty well and it's at least an interesting, data point. So for each first team, somebody got 5 points. For each second team, they got 3. For each third team, they got 1 point. So then basically I took our two lists at the top. So the max point you could get was 30 points. And then it was everything in between that. And then it would be broken out by guard. So if you got all 30 points throughout the first 3 quarters, you would equal a first team selection.
Whoa. How is 30 points?
Because I did both of our lists. So we each have 3
okay.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, already your math is just way off.
I know. Believe me, I stressed about this when I was doing this morning. I was like, I don't know if my brain's working, but I feel good about it. So 30 is the max points that you can get.
Okay.
So it ended up working out pretty well. So here's what we have, and I'm going to reveal these as we go team by team. And so we're going to do the first team based on the averages. Then we'll give you actually what we have, and we'll kind of go from there. So based on the first 3 quarters of the season and the point totals that we've awarded so far, here would be the first team going into the final stretch of the season. Your guards, Luka Doncic and Donovan Mitchell. Your forwards, Jason Tatum, who was the only player across the league to receive a perfect score. Don't know if that's any green with them be biased, but I do think that's probably the case just given the way everything is set up. Jason Tatum and Giannis would be your forwards, and Nikola Jokic would be your center. So that's based off the averages of the first 3 quarters going into this, not taking into account those final 20 to 22 games of the season. So let's start in the backcourt here. The averages say it's Luka and Donovan Mitchell. Who do you have in the backcourt for the first team?
I have Donovan Mitchell.
Same.
And then I went with SGA, I think. Let me double check. What did I write down? Yeah, I went with SGA here, man. No, I didn't. I'm sorry. I was looking at my queue. I was looking at a different list.
The wrong one.
I actually went with De'Aaron Fox here.
Okay. So real quick, I can see the error in what you're thinking, because that was my debate. It was between the two of them for that second spot. And so one thing that I do want to do on this podcast, I want us to try to figure out what our final list is. So I want us to try to come up with one list. So we both have Mitchell. So Mitchell's getting a first team All NBA spot. I thought that was a particularly easy choice. I went through, some of his stats. He's averaging a career high in points per game. He literally ended the season with, I think it was either 3 or 4 straight 40-point games before they sat him down to rest him for the postseason. He's turned Cleveland from a nice young frisky team into, I don't think it's going to happen, but there's a world, especially if Chris Middleton's not Chris Middleton, they give the Bucks kind of a run for their money. If Evan Mobley continues his ascension, we know Donovan Mitchell can be the scorer that you need in a playoff series to go get 30 to 40 points in big games. I wouldn't say it's likely, but there's a world in which the Cavs pull off some type of shocking upset here. And he's a big reason why. They're not doing that, certainly without him, but he's the reason that they even have an opportunity. So he's an easy call.
Yeah, I forget exactly when we said it, but there was one point where we were talking about the playoffs where we started talking about, it was months ago. We're like, what if Evan Mobley makes a leap? Like, what if it happens this year?
He's been awesome.
He's been so good. So that was something that was like when we just started to see the seedlings of Mobley, and we were like, if it happened, like it could happen this playoffs.
Yeah.
Like it might not, but it could. And if it does happen this playoffs, then man, those Cavs are going to give the Bucks a problem. But we're talking about the NBA teams here, and Donovan Mitchell is the guy. I think you and I have always been higher on Mitchell than like the average like NBA consumer. Like we think he is a legit star. So
he's in that top 10 to 12 range. Like I think he's back of the top 10, maybe up to like somewhere in the him and Devin Booker for me kind of fluctuate around the same area of that top 10 to 12 guys. They're somewhere in there, but he's in that area.
Coming into this year, I probably would have taken Booker over Mitchell. Obviously Mitchell's had a better year and has been more healthy than Booker, but I think that is probably, it's like them two and Jaylen Brown are all kind of like right around the same tier. Jaylen probably a tier below those guys, but like there's any of those guys could win a head-to-head matchup in a 7-game series, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So let's go to the second spot because this is where, so you ended up going Fox. I went SGA. These are the two guys that I thought of. And I'm assuming for you, the tiebreaker was De'Aaron Fox is on the 3 seed, SGA is on the 10 seed.
Yeah, and just like the Kings narrative, the fact that they broke the drought, that was huge for me. Like when I think back on this season, that's one of the things I'm going to remember about this season is the Sacramento Kings being not the Kangs, but the Kings, the beam team, all that stuff. So for me, when it came down to like Fox or SGA, it's like, I'm going to remember Fox probably more than I'm going to remember SGA. But I mean, who knows? Maybe like 3 years from now, that might sound silly.
So my pitch for SGA is that, you know, Fox has another all NBA guy on his team, right? SGA is doing this on a young team that we always talk about. What are the expectations? Now, the Kings didn't have certainly the expectations. They've exceeded expectations as well. But especially when Chet goes down before the season ever starts, we're wondering, all right, when are the Thunder just going to start resting Shea again so that they go for Wemby? And they really went for it this year. You know, with that young group, they went with it, and they kind of had to just because of how good Shea was. And so we're going to talk MVP. We're going to talk centers here in a minute. Something that blew my mind today. So free throws attempted per game. Number 1, Giannis, 12.3. Number 2, Joel Embiid, 11.7. Not surprising. Number 3 in the league, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 10.9 free throw attempts per game while shooting 90%. This, I don't know. For me, SGA's, this has been his definitive breakout year, right? So you talk about remembering for something. For me, De'Aaron Fox has become a better version of what we always kind of thought was there. This became 100% clear, definitive that maybe SGA is even in that Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker conversation that we were talking about. So when I look at them as players, I would want SGA a little bit more than De'Aaron Fox. But if we got to pick between the two, how strongly do you feel about Fox over SGA?
If we're making a green with envy list, I mean, I'm such a De'Aaron Fox guy. I'm super biased in this discussion here. And I just think like you can also make the argument against SGA for the fact that he had to do more. So his numbers are more inflated, right? Like Fox didn't have to do quite as much because he has Sabonis. He has a better team around him. So I think that's the other side of that coin. I would prefer Fox, but I'm not going to fight you. If this is the hill I need to die on, if I only can die on one hill in this list making exercise, I'm not going to die on this hill.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'll roll with Fox because I do think winning's important when you look at that first team All NBA. They've been consistently in that 2-3 seed. It's pretty amazing what they've done in Sacramento. So let's go Fox for that first team spot. So it's going to be Donovan Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox. This should be pretty easy here. Forwards, it's Tatum and Giannis. I don't even think there's a ton that we need to discuss. The only thing that I can really think of, and we'll talk about Giannis in the MVP talk here in a little bit, so I won't go too much into it. But, Jason Tatum, man, he set the franchise record for points per game, 30.1. First Celtic to ever score over 30 points per game, finished just shy of 9 rebounds. Like the year that Tatum had, the fact that he's such a distant fourth in the MVP discussions, it's pretty mind-blowing. But like I said, he was the guy that from the first quarter all the way through the end of the season, he's been very consistently. He's first team All NBA. This is, I don't want to say the new Jason Tatum, but this is the new expectations of Jason Tatum, is that you're in this grouping. You're no longer like, is he a part of the Embiid, Jokic, Curry, Durant. No, he's in there. That's been confirmed. That's laid to bed. Like, that is where Jason Tatum is. And so for him to get, back-to-back first team, likely first team all NBAs, back-to-back top 5 MVP finishes, that is an extreme validation of where he is in the hierarchy of the NBA.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also something to be said that like the guys coming for that spot just didn't play a lot of games this year. Like, that's LeBron, that's KD, that's Kawhi, right? So those guys, any other year, maybe they're fighting for that first team All NBA. But like Kevin Durant doesn't get hurt this year. He probably sneaks his way into that first team All NBA just because Tatum didn't quite keep it going as much as we hoped he would this year. He was amazing. Best I've ever seen Jason Tatum play. Yeah. But Kevin Durant's that good, like there's that possibility. But Durant got hurt and Jason Tatum has been freaking awesome. Yeah.
And he played 73 or 74 games here. I'm looking for 74 games. So over, even if we're looking ahead to next year.
And he played with a freaking hurt wrist all year.
Yeah. I mean, Jason Tatum just deserves his flowers here. So I want to make sure we spend a minute on that. We'll talk more about Giannis later. He's Giannis. We know the deal. Let's go to the final center spot here. And this is probably going to tell us a lot about what we think about the MVP race as well. I went with Embiid here on the first team over Jokic. What'd you go with? Same thing. Yeah. It feels like, it wasn't a super strong end of the season for Nikola Jokic. And especially when you mix that with the Nuggets struggles, like, no, I don't think anyone feels super good about the Nuggets going into the playoffs right now. You recognize that they're, the West is just a mess. And so, of course, they have a chance. But I think there's a lot more people that are looking at the Suns, the Warriors, even the Lakers in the play-in as, man, if they go up against the Nuggets, I might pick, those teams that are in the 4, 6, and 7 spots respectively. And that says a lot about, Nikola Jokic to a certain degree, just that you don't feel great about a guy. So I can't put him above. Whereas Embiid, we've talked about the Sixers and their faults. All of that sometimes doesn't matter when he does what he did against the Celtics a week or so ago. Like, he just can do stuff like that. And that's what leaves you saying, I'm glad we have home court, at least in that second round, because if we do come up against them, I want that. I want him to have to do that in the Garden and not be allowed to do that at home in front of the Philly fans.
Yeah, and also they're going up against the Nets the first round. Like, I don't feel great about Philly going into the playoffs, to be honest with you, but it has nothing to do with Embiid. It is just like with the team itself. Same thing how I feel about the Nuggets. It has nothing to do with Jokic. It's just like everything surrounding him. If they were going up against, I don't know, the Heat, I still feel like I'd pick them. It's just like the play-in tournament teams for the Eastern Conference, not as good as the play-in tournament teams for the Western Conference, right? The bottom of the West is probably better than the bottom of the East. So, I think Embiid deserves it. Jokic had a great season. He's going to be on both of our second teams. Shout out to Jokic. Let's go on to second team, though.
All right, let's knock this out here with the second team. So we're going to know 2 guys that are already on here, but let me give you the averages coming into this of what it would have been based on that scoring system. So the backcourt would have been Steph Curry and John Morant. The forward spots, KD still would have got one of the forward spots based on the point scoring system. And then the second forward spot was a dead heat between Jaylen Brown and LeBron James. So it would have been one of them on the second team. One of them would have had to get moved down to that third team. And then Embiid would have got the second center spot based on our averages. So with that, Curry and Ja, they got the second team spots based on the averages. Who did you go with for your second team here? Well, we know SGA is going to get one of the spots here. So who's the other guy that we got?
My other guard is Drew Holiday. I went with SGA and Drew Holiday. Same idea. The Bucks being the best team in the league, in a pretty stacked league, to be honest with you, without Chris Middleton. Like, same argument can go about Giannis doing it without Middleton. Drew did it without Middleton too. He had to take on a lot more of a scoring load, primary creator mode. I think he's the best defensive guard in basketball. So when I think back on this season, with Middleton being out and Holiday continuing to bring his game to another level, and the Bucks having the season that they did, he gets that spot. If, once again, there are other guys that could have taken this spot if they had just played more games or been healthier or just like not stopped playing at the end of the season, Dame Lillard, it's not his fault, but it kind of is his fault. If he really wanted it, if he was like, you know what, I really want All NBA, he could have just forced his way to keep playing. If he really wanted to.
Or if he was just, if his team was just better, he did a lot, but didn't do enough. Like that's just kind of the sad
like
truth
they're not
about
a good team, but they don't. It's not like they have nobodies on that team. They have some talent.
Especially when they didn't. They had Josh Hart before the trade deadline. They had a few more pieces that were in there. They traded. I mean, Gary Payton got hurt, but they had more talent than what they were showing, and then they just they tucked it away early, trying to make a last minute Wemby run. So it is what it is. It's going to hurt Dame, and that's just the truth. So for this other guard spot, this is where we're going to have probably a little bit of contention, because I think this might be the hill that I choose to die on. If we're going to say 55 games is the cutoff, it's got to be Steph Curry for me. He played 56 games. So if the cutoff's the cutoffs, like that's what it is. You know what I mean? So if it's 55 games, which we both went with, he's averaging 29.4 points, 6 rebounds, 6.3 assists, basically 50, 40, 90, missed it by percentage points. If that's, no, just about a little bit less. Yeah, just missed it by percentage points, actually. 49. Sorry.
You got to do math twice on a pod? Well, it's too much math.
I've got too many tabs open here. Shot 49.3%. So missed it by 0.7%. Shot 42.7 from 3, 91.5% from the line. The Warriors, when he came back at the end of the season, were able to get out of the play-in, all the way out of the play-in, secured themselves in that 6th spot, now have themselves a path of potentially, Kings, Grizz, and or Lakers to get to the Western Conference Finals. For me, this is one where I think Jrue Holiday's had an awesome year. Steph Curry, I mean, if he has 4 more games, I don't even think it's a question. So I think for me, this should be Steph Curry in the second team spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to argue like Jrue Holiday over Steph Curry in a vacuum, but when you look at just like the Warriors shitstorm that was this year, like that's kind of what it came down to for me.
But that wasn't him. Like that's Draymond, Poole. Like I mean, he's on the team where it's happening.
I get it. And Steph would never be the reason for that, because he's Steph and he's the model of consistency and he's like the perfect NBA superstar to have to build your franchise around. But the Warriors were still not good this year. Like they made a late run. They're out of the play-in, which like props to them. But when I'm looking back on this season, like, am I going to remember Steph Curry this year? Or am I going to remember Jrue Holiday? Maybe it's silly to say I remember Jrue Holiday more than Steph Curry, but like Steph kind of had like a year. Like it was great. The numbers are awesome. But like, how many times were you like, oh, damn, Steph Curry's like carrying the Warriors back to prominence? Like, it didn't really happen. He had like a couple, like, it was very inconsistent, the games where Steph carried them to victory. Like, there were multiple games this year where Steph did great, did everything he could, and they still lost, and maybe that's the fact that Wiggins didn't play. There's a lot of extenuating circumstances. Yeah. I'm not going to fight you on that, though. Like, I agree. If this is the hill that you want to die on, after we all get one hill to die on, if you want to put Steph on the second team, I won't fight you on that as long as Jrue Holiday gets a spot on one of our teams.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the third, because the third team is where I think it gets really interesting, and so we'll have to have some conversations about that. But I think I'm going to be a lot more lenient in that category. So I'm going to take Curry here. So we're going to put SGA and Curry as our backcourt here on the second team. That's the official agreement with the NBA backcourt for the second team. We'll lock that in. Looking to the forward spot, so this is interesting here. So, like I said, KD and Jaylen Brown / LeBron James was the averages that came out. KD, we talked about, he's not going to be on here. He played 47 games, kept getting hurt. It's just not going to be. So, for my forwards that I have here, I've got our guy JB. I've got JB on the second team, and I've got Jimmy Butler on the second team.
Double JB. I have LeBron, so I have Jaylen and LeBron. Jaylen, I think same argument for why I think the Bucks need to be top heavy here in the All NBA. Same thing for the Celtics. Celtics were the team in basketball this year, other than the Bucks. So I think both of those guys deserve All NBA spots, first and second team. And then I had to make a decision on a Laker, because I think that a Laker needed to be on here, whether it's Davis or LeBron, just because they're both that damn good. I needed to have another center on the third team, so I couldn't put AD there. I didn't think he deserved it over this other center, but I felt like I still needed a Laker on there. So I went with LeBron, and it was between LeBron and Jimmy Butler. And end of the day, I just asked myself, who would I rather have on my team, LeBron or Jimmy Butler? And the answer is LeBron.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a little bit like, similar to the Steph and Jrue thing, right? Like Jrue, not undeserving of that second team, but who'd you rather have? The answer is going to be Steph. So for me, it was also, I went back and forth. It was pretty much a coin toss of Jimmy Butler versus LeBron, leaned into Jimmy playing a little bit more. But like I just said to my own counter argument, like if we're saying 55 games is the line, LeBron hit 55 games and it's LeBron. So I think I'm cool with going LeBron here. I was pretty close to putting him on my second team choice as it was. And then that leaves us with Nikola Jokic getting that final center spot. So that makes the second team SGA, Curry, Jaylen Brown, money bags. If you're hearing that in the background now, that's just ka-ching. That's just money bags for Jaylen Brown, LeBron James, and Nikola Jokic. So with that, let's take a quick break here, Greg. And when we come back, we'll do our third team. All right, moving on to the third team, and this is where it's going to get a little, I don't want to say contentious because it's not contentious, but I think this is going to be some differences here, and we're going to have to sort out what we think is the right play. So once again, let's go back to the averages of the first 3 quarters of our running all NBA teams that we've been doing here. Based on the point system, the backcourt would have been SGA and Devin Booker, which is really interesting. And I think that just is more a testament to how many guys were on this long list that at different points fell into that third or second team category. So Devin Booker gets that second
Didn't
spot.
play enough games.
Yeah, he won't be on this list for either of us. He fell a little bit short of that mark, so he won't be on here. The forward spot, once again, Jaylen Brown and LeBron tied the second team, so one of those guys would have been on this third team. Surprisingly, Zion would have been the second and final member of the for forward spot here on the third team. And then I think the guy who's probably going to end up our center anyways, Domantas Sabonis, would have been the third team center. So
basically we know that we have Sabonis and Jimmy Butler on this team.
Yep, they're already on there. So it's the other 3 spots that we're looking at. So let's start in the backcourt here. And this is where I think we're based off what you've laid out as your terms. I'm pretty sure the 2 guys I have on here, you're not going to have based on your description. And that's Ja Morant and Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both off.
Both off. Get them out of here. I don't want anything to do with them. I don't want anything to do with either of those guys this year.
And listen, I thought about it. I mean, Luka was, so I said Jason Tatum had was the only person to have a perfect score. Luka was second at 28 points. As far as, those first 3 quarters and adding up everything, that's how bad this last part of the season has been for the Dallas Mavericks and for Luka, who we talked about, I kind of separated Steph from some of the Warriors issues. Luka's directly involved in a lot of the Mavericks issues. Like his body language has stuck. The defense has never been good, but it's been even worse.
But listen, you can always excuse Luka's defense and his laziness when he's such a dynamo on offense and he's leading his team to 50 victories every year. He didn't do it this year. That defense is awful. So if we can't make that excuse for him anymore because his team sucked. And if his team sucks, it's 100% his fault. It's Luka Doncic's fault. If he's the superstar that everybody says he is, that team does not fall out of the play-in. They don't need to win 50 games, but they need to be in the fucking play-in.
Yeah, you got to get to 45, 46 wins.
Ridiculous.
Whatever it is. So
I'd be fucking furious if I was a Mavs fan.
It can't feel good. It cannot. That has to be. And the thing is, I don't know. I mean, I was listening a little bit to Simmons and Russillo. I didn't listen to their awards take yet because I didn't want to, I wanted to have my own fresh thoughts going into this. But they just tanked themselves out of the play-in / playoffs to get the 10th pick, maybe get the 10th, 11th pick. Like, is that going to solve your problems?
Maybe, but also maybe leapfrog.
I mean, yeah, there's that little chance of that happening. But I mean, my point being, it's sad that you have a guy that is widely considered a top 5 player in the league, and that's where your season came to. And that has to be, to your point, a bit of a reflection on him. What's the quote from Remember the Titans you were watching the other day? Leadership. Go ahead. I can't remember.
I can't remember. Attitude is a reflection of leadership. I think that's what
something like that. Yeah, and that's Luka right now, and it ain't looking good. It ain't looking good. So that's him. So
shout out Julius Campbell.
Yeah. So I did have Luka on there, and then I had Ja, which we know the Ja situation. Here's the thing: on court, Luka, I think I am going to be okay with leaving him off if we decide to go that route. Ja, it's tough because he absolutely defines the distraction off the court. On the court, his team is pretty freaking awesome, though. And I know that they're missing, they're like going into the postseason, they're missing some big guys. So that's going to really hurt them, especially if they're going to get that Lakers matchup. They would have really needed to have Steven Adams. But the team on the court has been solidly the number 2 seed basically all year. Ja Morant statistically has had one of the best seasons of his career, probably the best season of his career. And that's the part where I don't know that I feel right leaving him off altogether, but he has been a massive distraction. He's got a lot of issues that I think right now are probably going to, for those that actually have real votes, it feels like it's going to make a big difference. And he might miss all these teams together, but just on the court, I feel like he's a guy that would have been probably pretty easy first or second team for me if it wasn't for all of that off court stuff, but it was there. So I don't know. It's tough to justify, but tell me who you had. So that we know I had John and Luka, who are definitely massive question marks. We know Drew Holiday's one guy that you're fighting for. You had him on your second team, but who are the other 2 guys that are at least in contention here?
So Drew and then Steph. So initially I had Steph on my third team, right? But Steph's now on our second team. But Jalen Brunson. So yeah. I would have Drew Holiday and Jalen Brunson here, and I would leave off Ja Morant. I'd leave off Luka. It's just like there are other guys that are having such spectacular seasons. If there are enough like black marks against you in this season, just there's always next year. But the league is so deep and there's so many guys having unbelievable years. Like I'm going to give it to Jalen Brunson for transforming the Knicks over giving it to Ja Morant for almost derailing the Grizzlies. You know what I mean? Like they're both just as good. There's an argument, like we all think Ja is this superstar, right? Because there's more evidence that he is this superstar. But like we just saw a whole season of Jalen Brunson being a superstar. We saw Jalen Brunson be amazing in last year's playoffs. So like fast forward 18 months, maybe it's not so crazy to say Jalen Brunson's on the same level as Ja Morant. It's just like this is the first year that we're like starting to have that conversation. So it's easy for people to be like, oh, you're fucking stupid. Ja Morant's so much better than Jalen Brunson. It's like, yeah, he has been. But like maybe Jalen Brunson, maybe these playoffs, he outduels Donovan Mitchell. Maybe in the second round, he like goes up against the Bucks and like goes head to head with Giannis and Drew. There's all these things that could happen. I like Jalen Brunson a lot. If I have to die on a hill for this, Drew Holiday has to be on one of my teams. So I'm going to make you pick between Ja Morant and Jalen Brunson.
I already wrote it down. I'm happy to go with Drew and Brunson. We're going with Drew Holiday and Jalen Brunson. Like I'm not gonna fight you on it because I don't have the energy to fight for all the shit that Ja Morant has done this season. Because I don't think you're wrong. It's everything that you said is very accurate. And part of the reason I wrote Jalen Brunson down at one point. So if I was choosing between Brunson and Drew, I would have actually leaned Jalen Brunson a little bit because I think the Knicks need someone on here. But as we get to the forwards, I didn't feel good about having 2 Knicks. I don't mind having 2 Kings. I don't mind having 2 Celtics. If we leave Drew on, that's going to put us with 2 Bucks. I'm totally fine with that. I mean, Drew was right there in the mix. Like Drew was on the cut line, for me in this mix. But I do think Brunson is the main catalyst behind the Knicks, rejuvenation. And even when Randall's gone down over the last couple of weeks, you've seen Brunson have a 48-point game against the Cleveland Cavaliers where they're playing in the first round. That's probably one of the most exciting first round matches. It's the only really East one that has a ton of major appeal, outside of whatever team that you're rooting for. I just think that's going to be an unreal series, probably 6 or 7 games. It's going to be really fun to watch. And Jalen Brunson's been awesome, man. I've been a big fan of Jalen Brunson all year, so I'm cool with that. Let's go Drew Holiday. Let's go Jalen Brunson. Sorry, Ja. Sorry, Luka. You'll be back next year. Y'all will have first, second teams in your future. So I'm okay with that. That's going to be our backcourt on the official GWE list here. Let's go to the forwards. So the averages gave us some combo of Jaylen Brown, LeBron, and Zion. Jaylen Brown, LeBron, we've already put him on the second team. So who do you got here in these third spots? Because one of mine was on my personal list was LeBron. He's already on there. We know Jimmy is getting one of these spots. So I'm putting Jimmy down now. And then the other guy that I had here, I had Julius Randle, which I'm open to being talked out of because I was debating between him and Jalen Brunson. And I feel like Jalen Brunson is the reason that Julius Randle is even on this list. So I would prefer to lean Jalen Brunson over Julius Randle. But if you also have Julius Randle, he might just be the choice here. Who do you got?
I don't, because I felt like there needed to be a Grizzly on here. And I know I thought it was ridiculous early in the season to say Triple J. But when I kicked Ja off, I was like, I need a Grizzly on here. And I looked into Triple J's stats and I looked into how many games he played, the defensive impact that he has, and like the development of him on offense. Like, I didn't think he had this in his offensive game, what he's shown over the last couple months of the season. So I have him here. I'm open to being talked out of it, but when I was setting my criteria, I was like, how can I not have one member of the number 2 seed in the West on one of these teams? So, like, although I don't feel great about Triple J being on it, I felt like I needed to have one of the Grizzlies on it. So he almost makes it just because of team success.
We almost have like inverse reasonings here, right? I left Brunson off because I was going to put Randall. I put Jar on because I needed a Grizzly on, and so we're almost just flipping this around. So I don't have I'm okay with. He's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year. So having your Defensive Player of the Year, he got his first All-Star nod. Like you said, the Grizzlies need some representation. So if we're taking Brunson over Ja, I like your reasoning, and I'm okay with going Triple J here. I think that this forward spot is a little bit up in the air. Like, I do think Julius Randle's had a really good year, but once again, I think Brunson is the reason for Julius Randle having such a great year. So and Randle got the All-Star nod. I would like to see Brunson get some type of acknowledgement. So I'm okay with that. Lauri Markkanen was in consideration. I mean, I think he's the most improved player. I don't think he should be on an all NBA team. He's good. It's a really nice story. Great job by the Jazz, Danny Ainge, all that. And then you look at other guys that would be a consideration. Like, man, the Raptors are just whimpering out of the playoffs right now, out of the play-in. Can't feel good about them. So Pascal, I think he's had a good year, but I don't feel, I don't feel like super strong conviction to put him on here. Same with DeRozan, same with Levine. Kawhi is a guy I thought about for a second because he has had a nice second half of the year, didn't play enough games. He's at 52 games, so he's not at enough. And then really the only other thing that we could do here, and this would be the one debate, I guess, that we could have, and you mentioned it before, Anthony Davis and Jaren Jackson. But I think Anthony Davis has mostly been a center. Jaren Jackson was playing with Steven Adams and with, Brandon Clark, Xavier Tillman. So I think Triple J is the call here.
Yeah, I agree. Great reasoning. I feel like we're channeling our inner Sonny Vaccaro, or Matt Damon as Sonny Vaccaro with these impassioned pleas today after we watched that movie last night. That was a great movie, by the way.
Great movie. Loved it. The David Falk character really stole it for me with his phone calls. I thought that was hilarious. I'm still thinking about that today. Looked up the actor's name. Shout out to Chris Messina. He really kills it. Y'all should definitely go see Air. All right, so we think we got our 3 lists here. Let me run through them here real quick. First team All NBA: Donovan Mitchell, De'Aaron Fox, Jason Tatum, Giannis, and Joel Embiid. Second team: SGA, Steph Curry, Jaylen Brown, LeBron James, Nikola Jokic. Third team: Drew Holiday, Jalen Brunson, Jimmy Butler, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Domantas Sabonis. We locking that in?
Lock it in. Lock it in,
baby.
To me, that's what defines this season right there. I know we don't have not every team has the most talented player, right? But they have the guys that deserve the spot this year.
Love it. That is the official GWE All NBA team. While we're here, Greg, let's run through some of these other single awards here. We'll do it real quick. We're going to do it rapid fire. We've been keeping track of MVP, but honestly, this lost a little bit of steam. It really just came down to, for me, if we're looking at the top 5, Jokic, to me, fell to third towards the end of the season. So it was between Giannis and Embiid. Like I said, Tatum, he's a pretty clear-cut 4th. Real quick, if you had to pick a 5th person, because I'm assuming you would also go Jokic at 3, Tatum at 4. Who would you put 5th? I put 3 possibilities of people that I think would go here. I would lean Donovan Mitchell. Yeah. The Kings guys are in the mix and SGA are in the mix. But I would lean Donovan Mitchell as that 5th spot.
I'd go Mitchell.
Okay. So Mitchell at 5, Tatum at 4, Jokic at 3. Who you got at 2?
Jokic at 3. I'm gonna go. I haven't given this much thought. I didn't know we were gonna do MVP today. I'm gonna go with Giannis 2, Embiid 1.
Embiid 1. It was a toss-up between the two of them. I have a toss-up. I have it literally written down as toss-up. I couldn't really figure out who to go with. It was kind of the LeBron Curry debates that we had in the All-NBA. I think I'd rather have Giannis than Embiid, as much as I love Embiid and think Embiid's amazing. But you can't go wrong with either of those guys. So if either of them walk away with the award, I think job well done. And I don't think it should go to Jokic at this point. I think it should be an Embiid-Giannis race. And it feels like it's probably going to go to Joel Embiid.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going to cut this part of the pod. I really need to go though. Okay. It's 1:42. So I think we should probably just wrap up here. and then like say something like, oh, we'll hit the rest of them on a future pod or whatever.
Here,
But, like,
just do one word answers real quick. I'll just go down and wrap it up. Be out of here in 2 minutes.
Okay.
1 minute. All right. Last one's just one word answer. Sixth man of the year.
Malcolm Brogdon.
Got it. Coach of the year.
Mike Brown.
Yep. Same here. We're on the same page here. Defensive player of the year. Triple J.
Haven't decided yet. Still up in the air on that.
Okay.
I'm okay with Triple J, but I'm gonna have to reevaluate that.
All right. We'll circle back. Most improved player. This is where I put Larry Markkinen.
I got SGA here.
Okay. I think those are the two right answers. Nothing wrong there. And then finally, our guy from the Orlando Magic, rookie of the year, Paolo Banchero.
Got to be Paolo. Paolo. But who is coming for the player of the class belt year 2? That's
Jalen Williams. That's who. Jalen Williams is coming up.
Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren.
We got a lot. We'll circle back to the rookie of the year belt. That'll be a topic for another day, but that's going to do it for our end of the season awards. It has been a hell of a season. It's on to the postseason. Celtics Heat, lot more coverage, or Celtics potentially Heat. We're recording this earlier in the week. I'm already being presumptive here. So we'll see. So more Celtics coverage coming your way here in just a little bit, but that's going to do it for this episode. Greg, let us know what we're going to hear on the way out.
Yano Drill, Black Sheep Optimist, Skywalk in. Peace, everybody.
Peace.